Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Friday, February 21st, 2025. I'm David Menzies, and my co host, well, let me tell you about my co host. Folks, do you know that February is National Time Management Month? And I was going to write something very sweet for my co-host, but I mismanaged my time. But in defense, February is a short month, only 28 days. And in any event, she is the she-devil with a spatula. She is the Khaleesi of BC. She is the sensational Drea Humphrey. How you doing there, Drea?
Well, thank you so much, David. I know our colleague Sheila Gunreed said you better introduce me good. So you you always do anyways. So I'm doing good. I thought you were going to say I'm great at time management, and to a certain extent I am. However, my friends and family, they do intentionally tell me a earlier time on social events to make sure I get there at the time desired. So,
Well,
um,
that is the big dilemma in our country, I would say, Drea, that in the East Coast, as we're just sitting down to have lunch, you guys are still finishing off breakfast. Okay.
yeah,
That
that's true.
3 hour time difference.
Yeah, I haven't even had breakfast yet. So I'm happy to be back on the Rebel Roundup. For those who don't know what it is, this is where we get together throughout the week and talk about the news of the day, what has been happening with you. It's live, it's unscripted, it's totally fun. And actually, my favorite part is that you watching can be a part of the show. So if you didn't know that, the best way to do that is to join us in one of two ways. So on YouTube, if you're watching us, you can go ahead and join the YouTube chats. It's all set up for you below. And if you're like me and you're like, nah, I'm kind of over YouTube, I want to support free speech, then join us on Rumble and sign up for the Rumble rants there if you haven't already. But when you make a donation, either on the YouTube or Rumble, that actually is a great way. We look at that, we read those comments. I think if it's $5 or more, but it also keeps the lights on. It helps Rebel News tell the other side of the story to the people. And thank you so much for everybody who joins in and does that.
Indeed. And I guess, Drea, the question of the day is, did you see that big Rock'em Sock'em hockey game against Canada and the U.S. last night?
I have heard about it. I did
You
not
oh,
see
you're the
it.
one. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
you
the
know what?
one.
I think there's so many storylines. Spoiler alert: Canada won in overtime, thanks to Connor McDavid. But this the game started off poorly, and it was for the Canadian national anthem. And by that, I don't mean the fact that it was being booed by the Americans at the TD Garden in Boston. I guess, turnabout is fair play. The Canadians in Montreal last week booed the Star Spangled Banner, but it was the anthem singer Chantal Kreviazuk. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Before I get into the nitty gritty, Drea, I think super producer Olivia has a clip of Chantal getting a little liberal with the lyrics of "Oh Canada." Let's check it out.
Oh Canada, terre nostarieux, true patriot love that only us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, oh.
So, Drea, for starters, it's kind of funny. I had never heard of this singer. I'm not all that
Me
into
neither.
popular music, but Lady Menzoid said, "Oh, just will you hear her sing? She is just got a lovely voice." I'm sorry, I've heard drunken karaoke come across better than that. Even Lady Menzoid, her eyes glazed over and went, "No, I'll show you some clips on YouTube." She's usually really, really good. But what is causing controversy, folks, is that if you listen closely, she changed the lyric. Um, in all of us command, that is the proper lyric, and she changed it to that only us command. That was a jab at President Trump, that, Canada is not for sale, et cetera, et cetera. She has received enormous blowback on X and other social media. And I can tell it got to her, Drea, because she issued a statement and she said,
Wow.
"Art to me is an expression of our truth." Okay, here's where I stand on this, Drea. Art to me. This is not your art.
Yeah.
It is a honor to be asked to sing "Oh Canada." You don't go freelancing. You don't go off the reservation and make up your own lyrics. If you want to do a protest song, you just write away, you record away, you sell gazillions of records. I don't care. But when it comes to the anthem, it's off limits. You sing it as it is written. And to me, this is outrageous chutzpah and no contrition from her. And by the way, the performance sucked, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Drea?
Well, I agree. It didn't sound very good. I'm going to have to check out Lady Menzoid's YouTube recommendations. But obviously, when she's live, she's not that good. But you're totally right. This isn't art. This isn't a form of her expression. This is a privilege. And this is something that we hold dearly as a nation and should continue to do so. It's certainly not the first time we've seen, woke people alter our anthem. And she took it to try to take a jab out of that. I was actually surprised she held on to "God Keep Our Land." I was listening out for that one too. But you know what? It's not that surprising, but I am equally outraged with you about it.
And you know what? The outrage starts at the very top, Drea, because the Justin Trudeau Liberals over the past decade have tinkered with our anthem so that, and I'm not kidding, I'm not saying this to be funny, but I really don't know what the lyrics are anymore. "Oh Canada," compared to what I sung in elementary school, if they still do that, who knows? And "Oh Canada" today, with all the tinkering, and you're right, it's a miracle God hasn't been taken out, and lest any atheists get offended. I could not sing for you the full anthem. So it's one thing to have it officially vandalized, but when it comes to an artist, "Oh, I'm singing my truth, man." No. You just follow the script. Be honored that you were asked to do so, and be done with it.
I don't think anybody really sings the full anthem. I don't even think most Canadians know how long it is. Sometimes at our Rebel live events, we do the whole thing, and people are like, when it gets to like the fourth verse, everybody's like looking at each other like, what? But yes.
Isn't that amazing? The unabridged version. Drea's right, folks. It goes on forever, and it wasn't until I was at a Rebel News Live event that I got to hear the unabridged version. I didn't even know there was an unabridged version. But there you have it. As I once heard a review of a Yoko Ono concert, it started out badly and then proceeded to get horrid. That was Chantel's version of "Oh Canada." And I guess moving on, whoever you are as an artist, whatever the nation is, it is an honor to be asked to sing the national anthem. Don't change on the fly, to use a hockey analogy. Stick to the proper lyrics. So, Drea, oh my goodness, I'm looking at the sheet. There are so many subjects. There's no way we're going to get to all of them. I'm kind of old school, old fashioned. Ladies first. What would you like to talk about first, my friend?
Oh, whoa, boy, did you throw a curveball at me. Well, I'm just going to actually stick with the list then. We've got a video here of Heritage Minister Pascal St. Onge saying that the Liberals want to enshrine in law the role that CBC Radio Canada plays in the fight against disinformation. To the role they want to entrench it, to support the public, especially in the current context when they're almost out the door. So we've got a little video of that.
Enshrined in the law, enshrined in law the role that CBC Radio Canada plays in the fight against disinformation to support the public, especially in the current context. And this refers directly to some of the recommendations that were made by the Foreign Interference Commission, which repeated how important it is that Canadians can rely on Canadian sources of information to be more resilient and to understand the patterns that the other countries use to disseminate propaganda or disinformation to influence how we live together and our political context. And this is why I propose to anchor in CBC Radio Canada's mandate its role in helping the Canadian population fight against disinformation and understand fact-based information.
Oh my God.
Drea, on Wednesday, Sheila Gunn-Reid and I were just discussing the latest initiatives by a group called Honest Reporting. And they routinely, and I mean routinely, almost every week, take CBC to task for its misreporting of what's going on in Israel. I can tell you CBC and the BBC are probably the biggest offenders in the world of misinformation and disinformation in terms of what's going on in Israel, to the point that, and I'm not kidding, I'm not making a joke, I'd rather get my news from Al Jazeera than CBC and BBC. They're continually called out in absolute lies. They do a retraction, they do an apology, and then a week goes by and they're back to their old biased bad habits. So for Minister Pascal Saint-Onge to say that CBC and Radio Canada, they play a leading role in the fight against misinformation, that's a little rich for me, Drea.
Well, we saw what happened during the COVID times, but another example of this is the burning churches. I did a report sort of rebutting. They came out saying that there's only been like maybe 30 church arsons, and that is so not true. I did a whole report sort of nitpicking everything that was wrong with that. But since then, we now know, thanks to federal MP, oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name, how horrible, but the order and paper question, that it's been over 460 churches that have been attacked by arson since 2016, 91 alone of those in the year of 2021, when the false claim that there had been 215 children's remains were discovered. And of course, the bulk of the 460 is from that point and on. So to tell the public, oh, look, it's no big deal, it's only 30. Well, first of all, 30 would be horrific if that's what it was. And it's really numbers like this. I mean, that shows you just how, where the misinformation is coming.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I got to tell you, Drea, how many people do you know in your circle that exclusively get their news from mainstream media, legacy media, however you want to call it, as opposed to going to alternative forms of journalism online? Because I don't know anyone, and the people I come across typically as misinformed protesters at demonstrations tend to be very, very old, even older than me.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Unfortunately, in my life, it's the elderly people whom I love and respect so dearly that just have the news like rolling, like it's just on 24/7. And if I have to go visit them, like I want to vomit. And I'm like, hey, do you guys want to change the TV? Because they trust what the news used to be. The news used to be that impartial source of what's going on, not weighing in their opinions, or I should say hiding their bias, pretending that they're not totally biased. So they still have that trust for it. But if you look at the studies as far as younger people, most people are getting their news from headlines, which still is mainstream news. Most people are just on social media, reading the headline, maybe the subheading, maybe a little bit more. They don't even make it to the bottom of the article. And that is very dangerous in itself, because whatever they pack into that initial thing is what a lot of people are taking. I think the stats are around 70%.
Wow. And by the way, Drea, speaking of mainstream media, I see we have a tweet by Nathaniel Dove. He is with Global News. This is about a Pierre Poilievre press conference in West End, Toronto at a food bank that I attended yesterday. The theme of the press conference was Fix the Broken Budget. And it was a fitting place. This particular food bank alone, Drea, in 2020, it was serving 10,000 regular recipients of food. Today in 2025, 70,000. And as Pierre Poilievre adroitly noted, it was in 2020 that Mark Carney signed on as Justin Trudeau's financial advisor. How's that working out for us? It goes from 10 to 70,000 recipients. It was a very sad place. I mean, they do great work, as do all food banks. But, God forbid one has to rely on a food bank to get by. And it just speaks of the reckless vandalism under the Trudeau Liberals that they've done to Canada, I think. But there was a bizarre sidebar to the story because 4 out of the 5 media outlets that got to ask questions, and Rebel News, shockers, was one of them. Well, 4 out of 5 are independent media. Radio Canada, I guess we do call that mainstream media, even though it's exclusively for Quebec and Francophone speakers. But Drea, let me tell you the meltdown that happened with the mainstream media. Nathaniel Dove, and I interviewed him afterwards, and I appreciated his time. But he tweeted out ahead of Poilievre's press conference, his comms team announcing he's only taking 5 questions from pre-selected media. True North, Y Media South, Asian Daily, Radio Canada, Rebel News, Oxygen Canada News. When asked why, his team just said, that's what we're doing today. So it's being presented as this great affront against press freedom. And Drea, what I have to say, and what I said to Nathaniel, is that with all due respect, where were you for the last decade? Rebel News has been banned from government pressers. We can't get into the House of Commons. We had to sue to get into the parliamentary prime minister debates twice, and twice we were successful. And the second time, the likes of Trudeau and Singh didn't even answer our questions, regardless of the judge's order. In my case, I was arrested 5 times for practicing journalism in public last year alone. That's Banana Republic crap, if you ask me. Did we see the mainstream media? Did we see the advocacy groups, the Canadian Association of Journalists, the Canadian Civil Rights Association or Civil Liberties Association? Did they come and voice their displeasure? The silence was deafening. And now when the shoe is on the other foot, the likes of Nathaniel are all about freedom of the press. What? How does it feel, guys? And by the way, I should say, I was interviewed myself by a CTV cameraman, nice guy. He was a freelance camera operator. And he was saying, so what you're saying that this is a measure of retribution for you? And I said, no. With all due respect, don't put words in my mouth. I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't want anyone to get excluded or censored or arrested. I'm not happy about any of that kind of stuff happening. But I'm asking you, where were you the last 10 years? And given that you're with CTV, do you think one of the motivations of the Pierre Poilievre communications team was perhaps they're a little teeny bit miffed that one of your reporters last year sliced and diced audio and video to make it look like Mr. Poilievre said something that he did not say, to which he said, I'm not really aware of that story. That was front page news, Drea. Anyways, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, what other news outlet can say that they had one journalist arrested unlawfully? I mean, you know what I mean? Not a single one. And also we had Ezra be arrested as well.
Yeah.
I was picked up and carried away by Trudeau's guards for asking a simple question before. Alexa Laveau shot in the leg with
Yep.
a tear gas canister and beaten with a baton for covering the Freedom Convoy. I mean, these are things that were not even reported in the news at large for the most part, except for the odd time when a story just went way too viral that they had to put, you know, their own little spin on it. With that said, I love it. I've got a smile on my face, but part of me is like, you know, if this is, hey, we're just taking questions because these outlets have been so neglected, I'm okay with that. I don't want to see this stick. When I go to cover a press conference, I expect to be treated just like every other journalist. That's what I want to see. That's what I do see when I go to a Polyev event normally. So maybe this is, like you said, because they've been twisting things so much. I don't, you know, we saw in the States with President Trump banning the AP journalists
Yes.
because they wouldn't say the Gulf of Mexico, or sorry, they wouldn't say Gulf of America. You know, I do think we got to draw a line somewhere, but you're absolutely right. It is, you know, a little bit like, where were you guys? And this is kind of fun to watch as it's happening in the moment.
Oh, absolutely, Andrea. I mean, the White House press corps, it's completely open to independent media now, and Mr. Polyev is open to independent media as well. And as Ezra said in his tweet, and it's basically repeating what I just said, Nathaniel, for 10 years, your colleagues in the Parliamentary Press Gallery have banned Rebel News journalists from even attending any press conferences on Parliament Hill. Why have you not objected to that? End quote. So that is suddenly when the shoe is on the other foot, it doesn't feel so nice, does it? You know. And by the way, that is a true statement, folks. We cannot get into the House of Commons to report on what's going on in the House because this parliamentary press gallery will not allow us. I mean, can you imagine, Drea? Its name is the Parliamentary Press Gallery, but you know what? We're going to pick and choose which press get to go in. And one final point on this, you know, going back to a year and a month ago when I was arrested by that RCMP Gestapo agent, Greg Dumichel in Richmond Hill for scrumming Chrystia Freeland, you know, the vast majority of comments were outraged about what happened to me that day. But then you get the ones and twos of, well, why are you bothering Chrystia Freeland going to an event? Why don't you just reach out and have a proper sit-down interview? Proper sit-down interview? We can't even get into a press conference under threat of arrest. We can only depend on catching these politicians on a public sidewalk. That's why.
And we have to do investigative work just to find out where they're going to be. I mean, these are elected officials, and we have to take that measure too, just to find out where they're going to be, where they're going to standing, because it's not coming in our inbox. So it's totally outrageous. I do have an ad read, and I want to stress that the companies that are so brave to partner with us are definitely companies you should support. That's the way I like to do things anyway. So in today's society, it's tough to be a man in a world dominated by overly masculine liberal women. Oh, my husband would love this. That's just not how it's meant to be. Everywhere we look, the gender neutral, this product, or made for her, that product, that is why we started a company that embodies the ethos of men's lives matter too. Ooh, isn't that a controversial statement right now? With products that aren't designed to be gender neutral or used by people with pronouns, or products at Rumble, our products at Rumble are designed and built for men by men, period. So if you struggle with low energy, mood swings, or hair loss, or if you need to perform better at the gym, maybe in bed, no bright ideas there, David, and recover quicker after. And recover quicker after. Throw out all your other garbage supplements and try animal organs. They are traditionally the most nutrient rich supplements on the planet, but our bison organs are a step above. The grass fed, non vaccinated bison are a species where the weak are allowed to die and only the strongest survive. So here is our commitment to you. From men who have real confidence in their products, try this today. And if you don't like it, fine, return it for a refund. Go to benaked.com, code studio, and get 15% off today. So again, that is studio is the code to get the 15% off.
You know what, Drea? I am going to put in an order this weekend.
Yeah.
I need a little help in the gym, that is.
That's why I said don't get any ideas. See? HR.
Oh, God. You know
No,
what?
but
And you began that ad read, with the sense that it's tough to be a man these days. I
I
used to
know.
think so too, but I got to tell you, Drea, a couple years ago when we did that caper where I impersonated Busty Lemieux by strapping on those fake Zed cups, I have a new appreciation for how tough it is to be a woman. I don't know how you go about the day with those things. I always end up with a backache. My center of gravity is completely thrown off. So I salute womanhood.
Well, we're not walking around with those. Okay, most of us are not. But I think you need to take a couple of seconds to tell that story when it got stuck on you, because it's like one of my favorite stories.
All right.
Oh, you're not going to say it? The
Oh,
story
pardon me.
where I said, I think you need to take a couple of seconds to tell the story of when they got stuck on you.
Oh, yeah. It's true, folks. I mean, these are the prosthetics that Kerry Lemieux uses. We know that because even though he claimed these were real, that he ended up with a very extremely rare medical condition, and he started developing his mammary glands at the age of 38. Oh, I'll say it's rare. What would you think, Drea? Maybe 1 in 8 billion? That's the current population of the planet. And of course, when Lincoln Jay and I caught him coming out of that Burlington shopping mall, that was the beginning of the end for him, because he stated that these breasts were real in one of the very few on the record interviews he gave, this one to the New York Post. And when we showed that they were take off things, they were just Halloween props, if you will, the school board had grounds to dismiss them. But so there you go. I mean, because that's the other thing. What are the odds that these boobs that we bought on eBay are the exact same size and shape as Kerry Lemieux's supposed real breast? But as I found out, much to my horror, when I first put those on, I didn't read the owner's manual. I go, you just put them on, right? And you're either supposed to cover your upper body with baby powder or wear a t-shirt, because what happens when you have these latex silicone things on you, folks, is you start to sweat, and then the silicone starts to adhere to your chest. And they weren't coming off that easy. I felt like, the David Cronenberg movie, The Fly, that I stepped out of a teleportation chamber as some kind of mutant. And, I think I can't even remember the substance we used to finally get them off, but we did. That was a close call. Dre, imagine yours truly, the lovable one, going through life like that.
Oh my, I think I'm not going to say it. Okay, you would probably secretly like it, since you volunteered to put those boobs on so many times, even on Fox News. So let's be real. Let's be real a moment.
Okay. So all you Mr. and Mrs. dress-ups out there, always read the owner's manual before affixing any props to your body. So we have... we have 2 ad breaks, folks, and then we'll get back into all the news of the day.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
I've got a better idea than tariffs. What would an America First strategy for Canada-US trade look like? Is there room for a Trump-style mega deal even bigger than Greenland? A dozen years ago, I wrote a best-selling book called Ethical Oil, The Case for Canada's Oil Sands, which made the liberal argument that the oil sands are the fair trade coffee of the world's oil industry. In my new book, Deal of the Century, I look at Canada-US trade through an America First lens, and I come to the conclusion that far from putting tariffs on Canadian oil, Donald Trump should ink a 50-year, $13 trillion deal to buy all 170 billion barrels of Canada's oil sands, shutting out China and giving Canada the means to pay for a rebuilt military. And as for yanking Trudeau's chain, well, he'll be gone as prime minister in a few weeks, but I've got a better suggestion for how Trump can slap Trudeau around a bit without hurting America's economic interests. That's in the book too. Get your copy now at dealofthecenturybook.com. And trust me, Trudeau doesn't want you to see this.
So, Drea, we left off with the uber woke Halton District School Board first accommodating someone who I believe might be a sexual pervert to finally dismissing him allegedly. And on the point of radicalization and school boards, you have a heck of a story. Say it ain't so, the Liberals are doling out yet more money to activists for radical gender indoctrination at BC schools. What's that all about, Drea?
Well, first of all, if you guys don't know, Rebel News is basically becoming Canada's Doge right now, as best as we can journalistically. So if you haven't checked out our campaign called exposethewaste.com, you got to put that in your notes. Make sure you save that link and just keep checking it regularly, because we are committed to exposing how your tax dollars are being wasted on the most wokest stuff you can imagine. Now, this story is $1 million being given over and above what's already been given from the Liberals to the ARC Foundation, which is a group of sex activists under the umbrella of a non-profit organization. Now, they are the ones who are behind the highly controversial sexual orientation gender identity program called SOGI 123. You've probably seen the protests we've covered, Stop SOGI 123. They are the ones that think sexually explicit books in your kid's library is safe and inclusive learning resources. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say, actually, I'm not allowed to show you. We're not allowed to show you on YouTube what's in those books, because I've already done a report how we got in trouble for doing that. Jeez. So your kids are picking up this cartoon porn and looking at it because of these radical sex activists that the Liberal government is giving $1 million to. And they say that the funding is listed under the project title called Supporting Educators in Addressing Anti-2SLB, you know what I'm talking about, Hate in Education.
Unbelievable.
And it runs from November 2024 to March 2027. So it's to combat, yet again, that favorite trigger word, misinformation and disinformation. And so I have some examples of what this has led to, like the BC educator Maya Malakoff, who, when she was upset that a local drag queen library, Drag for Kids show was shut down, you know what she did? She said, you know what? Well, if they can't go to the library, they can watch the drag queen story time in my class. And so without getting parents, oh my gosh, what's that word? Permission, she showed kindergarten kids a drag queen story time, reading a very confusing book that promotes gender confusion. And to make matters worse, she took a picture of the kids and put it on her Instagram to say, yay, look, look at the activism I'm doing. And she didn't even blur their faces. This is the type of crap that your tax dollars are going to fund these teachers who think they're standing against hate by creating little social justice rainbow warriors who are going to turn against you and be confused about who they are in a minute. It's terrifying.
Drea, as I've said before, I think a lot of these people are actually mentally ill. I think they need treatment. They don't need accommodation. They don't need promotion. They sure as hell don't need a pulpit in a classroom full of elementary school age children. And it's amazing what's happened to our schools, how far away we've gone from, I don't know, education in terms of the 3 R's to all of this rainbow mafia indoctrination. Dre, I don't know about you. I'm older than you, but let me tell you this. When I was going to elementary school and junior high and high school, I didn't know the sexual orientation of my teachers. I didn't know if my teachers were married. I didn't know if my teachers had kids of their own. You know why? Because it would be inappropriate. My teachers never talked about their private lives. They were there to do one thing: teach. And whether that was history or arithmetic, reading and writing, that was their bailiwick. Everything else was irrelevant and inappropriate. And now we have, that clip we just ran of that guy shaking his false boobs like he's a stripper on stage. Are you kidding me? How is this enriching the minds of young people? It's not about education anymore. It's about indoctrination. And the fact that our tax dollars are going to aid and abet this is egregious and outrageous. And as you said, we need our own version of Doge, an official one. Right now, Rebel News, and I would say our friends at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we are the unofficial Doge agents, but we need someone in government to cut and burn and slash this grotesque funding.
Absolutely. It's so bad.
And now, speaking of indoctrination, the TDSB, which stands for the Toronto District School Board, in a way, I'm surprised this hasn't happened yet. They're moving ahead to erase Sir John A. Macdonald, Egerton Ryerson, and Dundas from Toronto schools. And yet again, and we know the reason. We don't have to get into that. It's the reason why Young Dundas Square is now Sankofa Square. Why? Because Mr. Dundas, who was an abolitionist, you got that? He was against the slave trade, but the left say, well, he wasn't against it enough or fast enough, right? So that's why he has to be eradicated. And we take a word from Ghana, which in the 15th century was a hub of the world slave trade. But never mind that. It's diversity, you see. But in any event, think of what our schools could use in terms of, materials, in terms of getting portables off the grounds and building an extension to a school for those schools that need that. But no, we've got to spend I haven't read the entire article. I don't know what this is going to cost. We're not getting out of this for at least high six figures, Drea. And is there a public demand for this? No. These are the educrats. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I've been covering school boards for a good 15 years now. And I'm telling you, the people that are in the school boards are amongst the most stupid ideologues I have ever met in my life. And right now it's the tail wagging the dog. And with public funding, they're getting away with this wokeism. Again, Drea, we need regime change in this country because this ain't happening south of the border under Trump anymore.
Absolutely. And the money, that's the thing. Keep your eye on the money and call this out so that something actually changes. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. It says that there was a board that actually is starting to change their mind. The principles were devised as professional historical guidance to school boards, municipalities, and similar public bodies undertaking. So, however, on Wednesday night, the full board voted 11-7 to move ahead. That's an improvement on the 6-1 vote at the committee level. So basically, imagine being on the board with all the pressure there with all of the wokies. And I've done reports on how basically these radical ideologies started to infect academia in the 70s to sort of go after who would be the educators, to change the universities and their ideology so that they could pass it down. And that's what we've seen, so that the next teachers of the universities and the next high school teachers and all of that are these people who are doing votes like this and easily persuaded to cave as the pressure continues.
And Drea, why don't we make this? I know the left loves this language. Why don't we make this a teachable moment? Which is to say, every great man and great woman, well, you show me a great man and great woman, I will show you a flawed person. Nobody is perfect. And I'm willing to compromise on the issue of hindsight being 2020, which is to say, you don't tear down a statue, you don't board up a statue like the statue's in a makeshift coffin. How about erecting a plaque stating that, with the passage of time, some people, some communities, however you want to word it, have issues with this particular individual, and have a debate about it, have discussion. But this idea of cancel culture eradicating history, this is just 1984 crap I cannot sign off on.
No, absolutely. And who from the past, most people, you're going to have an issue with how people did things in the past. We did things way different than we do now. So
yeah, 100%. Well, before we get to the latest in Israel and Gaza, I believe we have a Rumble ad read and a Rebel ad break, and take it away, Drea. Not yet. I'm usually yelled at for being slow, and now I'm premature.
We can do the ad. We'll do the ad break, and then you guys can get the ad read. Oh, okay.
Okay. Very important issue. I'm happy to talk about it. Shiri Bibas, body returned from Gaza, is not the person who we thought it was supposed to be. This is according to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. This is gross, Drea. Not only has this person presumably perished, and I guess living in a torturous environment underground for a good year and a half, that'll probably do that to any person, no matter their strength. But it looks like Hamas tried to pull a fast one. I don't know how they thought they could get away with that in this day and age of DNA and forensic science. But this is absolutely sickening to me. And talk about acting in bad faith.
Is it that they're trying to pull a fast one and they have too many bodies to even know who they have there? Like, this is just so sickening. Says Israel has said Israeli children, Ariel and Kfar Bibas, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, who were taken hostage. So this is about the kids as well. I think we're going to get to that in a completely separate post, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, well,
I can read this. So those who, okay, sorry about this, guys. Israel has said that Israeli children, Ariel and Kfar Bibas, who were taken hostage on October 7th, were deliberately killed by their captors. So do we have a picture of them? Because I think that's really important to show. There's one. Earlier, Israel said 3 of the bodies handed over on Thursday have been identified as Ariel and Kfar. I don't know how to say that name, who would have been aged 5 and aged 2. And peace, so bad. And peace activist Oded Litvich, 84, the IDF said. But the 4th body was not Shiri, nor another hostage, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu alleging that Hamas put the body of a Gazan woman in a coffin instead. So yeah, that does sound like an intentional switch up there.
But you would know it from some of the media coverage. Our colleague Sheila Gunn-Reid, she writes, that's quite the spin from the Globe, that this was an error. Like a clerical error, like in Monopoly, bank favor in your error, collect $10. I mean, are you kidding me? an error. The way we soft pedal these monsters is unbelievable. And in fact, why don't we throw to a video from open source Intel about how these savages in Gaza paraded the bodies of Israeli hostages through the streets. Check this out, folks.
It's like a
You know, Drea, in addition to being monsters and savages, here's the thing about Hamas. At the end of the day, they are losers with a capital L, as are their colleagues with the Houthis, as are those with Hezbollah. And I think it's only a matter of time. And when I speak of time, I speak of within the next 4 years under Donald Trump 2.0, where we go after the head of the snake, the mullahs in Iran, who are funding these hooligans. And by the way, that is completely due to the inept actions of the Biden administrations. Trump put sanctions on Iranian oil. The US boot was on Tehran's throat. And when the Biden administration took over, they simply refused to enforce the sanctions, meaning that Iran was getting billions and billions of dollars, primarily from China, from selling oil. And what do they do with that newfound wealth? They fund terror around the globe, and especially in the Middle East. And I think, Drea, that the party is over for the Iranian regime. I know so many Persian Canadians. They can't wait for the day they can go back to Iran, even just to visit and not be arrested. Because if you post something negative about the regime on social media, you will be targeted. And this is really going back to 1979, buyer's remorse. I mean, hey, listen, the Shah was not a Boy Scout, but compared to what the Iranian people have endured, compared to what people in the region of the Middle East have endured under the mullahs. I think the Shah, if he were still around, would be welcomed back with open arms. But that's the important point. They can put on this pomp and circumstance parade, glorifying civilian casualties. But at the end of the day, their days are numbered, and I can't wait until they're eliminated 100%.
I mean, I just want to go back to them parading the bodies like it's a national holiday. And it's hard not to remember the flashes of October 7th when they did the same. But also, I don't see that we have the link here, but the witnesses that are talking about the babies who died, they're saying that they killed them by hand, like just totally. And so that it's just so sick. And I think of all the people who have been accused or defending October 7th, which is when these people went missing. The father was returned February 1st. But imagine this father and the rest of the family just waiting for this. And then they don't even get the dignity of having the right body or knowing what's happened to her. It's so sick. And I agree with you. Their days are numbered, as they should be.
Yeah, and you know, Drea, I think the vast majority of people, and polls show this, they are against what's happening in the Middle East. They are supportive of Israel. But I see in our comment section, you'll get ones and twos of, Israel's schmizrael, it's half a world away. Why should I care? Why should you care? Because first it's Israel, and first it's the Jews, and then it's you. And that is not conjecture. We know that the Iranian regime is working as fast as it can to develop A, nuclear weapons, and B, hypersonic missiles to affix those missiles on. Remember, America is the big Satan. You don't think these maniacs would use nukes if they got their hands on them? That's why you should care.
Yeah.
All right. So, is it time for the ad break now, Olivia?
And has anybody joined us in the chats? Remember
Oh,
that
good question.
yeah, in case you missed it, you can let us know what you think about anything that we've been talking about or anything that you think is important that we missed via YouTube chat or Rumble rant. We'd love to hear from you. All right.
Apparently not.
Apparently not the ad time.
Not even Annalise.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Where's our normal people? Okay. So here. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to find. Okay, ad break. I don't see a read for me. So.
I think
Well,
we
hi,
do.
it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.
Well, Drea, turning to crime, we have a little video coming up. Oh, lo and behold, Canada is following suit with the U.S. by listing 7 cartels and gangs as terrorist entities. Golly, I wonder why we're moving from hug a thug to getting tough on crime. Let's hear what Public Safety Minister David McGuinty has to say.
This morning, we are announcing that the Government of Canada is listing 7 transnational criminal organizations as terrorist entities under Canada's Criminal Code. Transnational criminal organizations, including cartels, play a leading role in the production and distribution of fentanyl throughout Canada. To rid Canada of this scourge, our government will ensure law enforcement has every tool available to dismantle and disrupt the operations of these organizations in our communities. These listed entities are organized crime groups that spread fear in local populations by using methods of extreme violence and are known for drug trafficking, human trafficking, and trafficking in illegal guns. The listing of an entity under the Criminal Code follows a rigorous and ongoing process that must meet a legal threshold. Listings are, in fact, based on evidence, intelligence, and the law. All 7 of these transnational criminal organizations clearly meet this threshold. Once an entity is listed, it is considered to be a terrorist group under the Criminal Code. The Criminal Code prohibits certain actions in relation to terrorist groups, including those related to terrorist financing, travel, and recruitment. It is prohibited for any person in Canada, as well as every Canadian abroad, to knowingly deal with the property of a terrorist group. To avoid criminal liability, banks and brokerages will freeze these entities' assets, which can then be the subject of seizure, restraint, or forfeiture. It is also an offense to collect property or provide financial or other related services knowing it will benefit or be used by a terrorist group. We continue to review and evaluate for potential listing of any additional transnational organized crime groups that may pose a risk to people in Canada and Canadians abroad and Canada's national security.
Well, Drea, first and foremost, please educate me when Minister McGuinty is talking about transnational crime groups. He's not talking about male criminals who identify as female criminals and vice versa, is he? Because, wow, we even have a bigger problem on our hands. But, of course, the question I asked rhetorically before we went to the video, folks, is why now? Well, regime change in Washington. And isn't it a little rich, Drea, that under the Trudeau Liberals, we have had a hug a thug mentality. We have seen the worst of the worst criminals get parole and bail. I'm talking right up to attempted murder. Yeah, being put back out on the streets. Imagine being in law enforcement. You bring in these hooligans only to see them go back out the court as though there's a revolving door. We see the most cretinous criminals in our institutions going to Club Fed. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Paul Bernardo. Way to go, Marco Mendicino, the previous public safety minister. So I just, like I said, Drea, I'm taking this with a shovel full of salt that suddenly in Ottawa, we're going to get tough on crime when we know the real reason. It's not about doing the right thing. It's not about protecting the safety of law-abiding Canadians. It's because there is a new sheriff in town south of the border, and he's talking about tariffs. So, as you said earlier, follow the money, right?
Yeah. And that tariff, the tariff spanking is not just affecting Ottawa, it's affecting provinces too. Out here in BC, we announced that we are stopping our Safer Supply Take-Home program. How sick is it? I put a link there, the CBC one. How sick is it that it takes the United States to threaten terrorists for us to say, okay, yeah, maybe we should stop, trafficking these drugs out so that teenagers can stand around the corner and pick them up and buy their opioids from drug addicts who don't like that. That's not their drug of choice. So they sell it to go get their drug of choice. And I've got a picture of a little girl here, for example, a 14-year-old girl.
14,
right? 14-year-old girl, and her dad says that's exactly how she died. Camilla Sword is by buying the Safer Supply, the take home that was going into the homes of little kids. And British Columbia, with Dr. Bonnie Henry as the public health officer, have known that these drugs are being diverted, and they are being diverted across borders, and they are being diverted into the hands of kids. I've reported on it well over a year ago. And all of a sudden now, they're taking issue with it.
It's unbelievable. And by the way, in the Department of calling them as I see them, Adam Zivo, that wrote that National Post story, he's done really good work on these so-called safe supply places. And, and just to go back to independent media, isn't it amazing, Drea, that when I was covering the safe supply place on Queen Street East in Toronto, which more than a year ago, a mother of two was shot in broad daylight because the gangbangers who hang out these places, because this is where the market is for their illicit drugs, she was shot by an errant bullet. And the safe supply house, their response was to serve me with a trespass notice, even though I never went into the building. I was just on the sidewalk. So just deny, censor, and pretend everything is business as usual. But imagine, Drea, you being the mother of a 14-year-old girl. I mean, you're not even old enough for a driver's license. You can't even buy lottery tickets yet. And she's being basically murdered by illicit drugs, all in the name of safety. This is grotesque.
Funded by tax dollars. It absolutely is. Well, people heard our call. Thank you very much, Rebel supporters, for chiming in. Actually, before I get to those real quick, I'll just let everybody know that our friend April Hutchinson, who has stood up for fairness and safety in women's sports, particularly in her sport of powerlifting, has a special event that is going to be taking place Saturday, February 22nd. And so it will be her, the NHL legend Theo Fleury, and Rebel alumnus Adam Sos. So they're coming to the Church on the Vine, or in the Vine in Edmonton, for a fire and ice event. And so this is something you do not want to miss. It's going to be good discussions, good motivations, perfect timing in 2025. And you will hear April's story if you haven't heard it. She is definitely an overcomer and a fighter. If that wasn't already obvious, you have to hear her story. So we have Albert.
Oh, and by the way, I should say, Drea, the Reader's Digest of the story, if you aren't familiar with April Hutchinson, she is a incredible female powerlifter. And suddenly powerlifting, if you can imagine, even that sport where athletes are judged solely by their strength has been invaded by men pretending to be females. And for April Hutchinson, just raising this issue, her sports association banned her for 2 years. Can you imagine? It was later reduced to 1 year. But this is the censorious cloud we have in Canada still in the Department of Transanity. I will tell you though, Dre, on the lighter side, when I first went down to London and got to meet April, we were talking about a whole bunch of things. And I said, what is the good and the bad of being a female powerlifter aside from this issue? And she said, well, believe it or not, she is frequently confronted by very short men who offer to pay her if she will pick them up over her head when she's capable of, folks. And I go, do you do that? She goes, no, it's uncomfortable. I go, April, if there's dumb little guys out there that want to be parted from their money, do it. And she goes, no, I'm just not comfortable. I think it's a fetish thing. So anyways, that is one of the downsides, I guess, being a female powerlifter.
She's classier than that, but with inflation, you never know. But yeah, to find out more about that, you guys can go to canadiansfortruth.ca. And even before that happened to her, she has an amazing story. So Albertadon donates $5. Thank you so much. And says, welcoming Palestinians to Canada is crazy. Ask Denmark. Palestinian immigrants will be seen as heroes by young Muslims. I think it's more the radical Islamists that we're mostly concerned of, and we're not vetting people properly, and we're welcoming them in at mass. It's terrifying.
We're not vetting them properly. And Drea, we know from polling up to 80% of the people in Gaza, even now, support Hamas. Can you imagine? Even after the atrocities of October 7th, 2023, even after Hamas used Palestinian civilians as human shields and commandeered hospitals and mosques and schools to hide their arms, there is still up to 80% support. And, the really perverse sidebar on this, because the Justin Trudeau Liberals, they're issuing 5,000 visas. That means more than 5,000 Gazans, because it would, some of those visas would include an entire family. Do you know, Drea, right now that some of them are suing Canada because the process isn't moving fast enough? Can you imagine the chutzpah in the Department of give them an inch, they'll take a kilometer? And I have no doubt the moment they touch down here, once there is any kind of anti-Israel, anti-Jew hate fest, they will be there. It is going to be gasoline on a fire.
It's not just anti-Canada, like you said, burning the flags as well in the name of the resistance. Gillian, the press, donates $10 and says, I didn't know this. Karina Gold says the threat of a tariff trade war might cause elections to be suspended. Of course, she says that. Despicable. I agree. Wouldn't that be just the perfect excuse?
Do you know what? I miss that, but I believe it. And why do I believe it? Because, Karina Gould doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of becoming Liberal leader, but the heir apparent, the man who would be coronated, Mark Carney last week said to get his agenda pushed through, he would use the Emergencies Act. I mean, Drea, there isn't even an emergency. And this guy, just like I think 3 days before the anniversary of the brutal takedown of the Freedom Convoy, thanks to the Emergencies Act, is bragging that he will use this as one of the tools in his toolbox. So I guess if it's good enough for Mark Carney, it's good enough for Miss Gould.
Lord help us all if that man gets in there.
Oh.
Aricia says, I really like that you and Taxpayers Federation are the Canadian Doge. Thank you. You see it too. You see it happening too. Keep up the necessary work. I totally agree. It's so important. I can't take credit for the idea, but I'm loving it, and share it with others. Because I think when it's all in one spot like that, where there's a list of report after report of just absolute garbage that we are funding, it's such a wake-up call ahead of an election. So thank you for your donation for $10 as well, and your feedback. I Am Black donates $5 and says Menzies getting stuck wearing fake breasts because he didn't read the instructions. What a man.
Wait a minute, I Am Black. You're not Justin Trudeau, are you?
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's why I made him tell the story. I laughed so hard when you told me the story because I just had the mental picture. I can just see it, and a little bit of panic on your face, like.
Well, Drea, the phrase "not so funny when it happened" just springs to mind. Okay.
And Jesta Bursey donates $5. Thank you very much, and says, "Thank heaven Kamala wasn't elected down south. Our federal government would never have taken the measures they are talking about. Won't hold my breath, though." I absolutely agree. We wouldn't be seeing any of this long overdue, at least talk of action.
Oh, the bullet America dodged in November. But Dre, I want to ask you about something because I thought my ears were deceiving me. I was watching some American news channels, and they are actively talking about, the Democrats that is, of Kamala Harris 2028.
Oh gosh.
How can this be? It'd be like Ford Motor Company saying, "Hey, we're bringing back to market the Ford Pinto on the original design specs." I mean, I thought we're in a political climate, more or less, where it's one and done, and she failed by every single benchmark. This can't be real. Surely there has to be somebody. I mean, I know it's slim pickings in Democrat land, but for them to go back to the trough with Kamala Harris, like, Drea, is this a thing?
Trump is so for America, and he's doing exactly what he said he would do so fast that I think they wouldn't have much luck if that keeps up anyways.
Yeah, I'm just astounded. And I think it, to one extent, it really does show how morally and intellectually and creatively bankrupt the Democrats are, that they haven't learned anything from November's election. But what I see, Drea, is they're doubling down on wokeism, DEI, all of their failed policy planks. And I'll tell you who the happiest man in the room is. JD Vance. I mean, he's going to be the presidential pick come 2028. Yeah, please, come on, Kamala. Don't hold back. Let's go. Let's dance.
True. All right. I think we're good.
Oh, yeah, indeed. 10 minutes over. Well, time flies. Well, Drea, thank you so much for helping out. Sheila had so much on her plate. She's no slacker. She's not taking a long lunch or anything like that, you cheeky monkeys. Sheila has so much work to do, as we all do here. So thank you so much, Drea. It's been too long since we last co-hosted. And folks, what can I say? But thank God it's TGIF. We will be back, that is to say myself, and I think the aforementioned Sheila Gunn Reid on Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Can't wait for that. In the meantime, have a great weekend. And as always, stay safe and stay sane.
This message your party is sending that Canada is broken, do you think it's resonating with Canadians given the fact we're seeing this rising nationalist feeling?
You know, I've had the opportunity to door knock in some of the frigid weather that we've had across this country over the last several weeks. And as our party leader, Pierre Poilievre, has said in interviews on this topic this week, it is perfectly permissible, not just permissible, but necessary to address the systemic issues that the Liberals have caused in Canada that are causing people a lot of pain and a lot of harm. You know, people can't afford groceries. That's one of the number one things that I get in my inbox in my constituencies, that they can't afford to eat or pay their rent. There's many systems in our country that just aren't delivering what they're supposed to do. Our federal deficit is out of control. These are all problems that need to be addressed. They shouldn't be glossed over. And I understand why Liberals like Mark Carney are trying to gloss over that fact, because they want Canadians to forget the pain and destruction that this government has caused them. So we're doing something far different than the Liberals are doing. First of all, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is going out and acknowledging the pain and destruction that the Liberals have caused, like the suffering on our streets due to the fentanyl crisis, like the housing affordability crisis. But the other thing that he's doing is he's coming out with tangible policy, like our Canada First plan. Meanwhile, you've got Mark Carney coming out spewing some sort of gobbledygook about spending more and investing spending. So, you know, I think that acknowledging the fact that the Liberals have caused Canadians suffering and coming up with a firm plan to achieve that is something that we will continue to do. And I'm proud of our party leader for doing that.